so many different artists. There's only going to be one of them, and there's only one of you. So add your flair to it. Don't strive for perfection and playing exactly like this one artist. Add your spice to it somehow, some way, and I think you'll get a lot more enjoyment out of it in the long run.
Hi, and welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. If you've ever wanted to play bass, you should know that right now there are thousands of people inside the For Bass Players Only community, a lot of them over 50, and they are playing bass, learning bass, playing music that they love, and having the time of their life. You should come join them and experience that incredible transformation for yourself. As I always say, you're never too old to groove, so let's play bass. My guest this week is Nick Cañas. He is an outstanding multi-instrumentalist hailing from Texas. With a background in jazz and metal, Nick plays instrumental rock, progressive music, and he is pretty darn good at that double thumbing technique on the bass. He's in a high energy metal band, Nautilus versus Pangolin, among other things, including his solo project called Sanak. This is his first time on For Bass Players Only. Welcome, Nick. It's so great to have you.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. This is a great opportunity. I really love the website. I love the vision. It's amazing, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you very much. We're happy to have you. So I mentioned you're from Texas. Are you born and raised there? You've been there all your life?
Yes, correct. Yep, I've been living here my whole life. I'm down in the very deep south in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley, right along the Texas-Mexico border.
Okay. Tell me about, I want to start with the early days
Mhm.
and your initial exposure to music and how you became a bass player. You come from a musical family, brothers and sisters, music playing in the house, going to concerts, things like that. How would you describe your musical upbringing and your attraction to the bass?
Gotcha. So a lot of it started when I was young. They got me into more of the overdriven sound of guitars and bass. Growing up with my dad being really into 80s and 90s music with the Motley Crue, the Nirvana, all that stuff, just high distortion. And even in video games, getting me into the modern stuff like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater stuff that was real punk. Um, I was just surrounded by that distorted guitar sound, and that played into me getting into wanting to play guitar. And I primarily right away just went into rock and metal. That just piqued me from the start. And a year after I picked up a guitar, I picked up bass. So I have about the same amount of experience in on both instruments.
What was the allure of the bass? What made you pick that up? Most people play bass because there are already too many guitar players. And well, it was my story. You can
Hmm.
play guitar and not be in the band, or you
Hmm.
can play bass and be in the band. But you seem to have like an equal attraction to both. So, what
Hmm.
was it about the bass that made you want to pick it up and play?
I feel like the bass just is it's a powerful instrument. And something I learned about growing up in the jazz scene, which I also did play guitar and bass for the jazz scene on and off different years, is you do have a lot of power mentally and sonically as well. And especially in metal, I think if there's, no bass, it kind of lacks in a way. And especially live, it's just such a booming force. I think you need that type of energy and frequency to be there for you in all music, but especially in rock and metal.
Well, did you hear it in the music you were listening to, or did you have a friend who played the bass, or, how did you first discover it
Mhm.
and decide that you wanted to play it?
So I would like to think I'm a very detail-oriented person. So when I did listen to the music, I very much heard, a lot of layers from the jump. And I remember listening to Wood by Alice in Chains, that intro bass line, the dooga 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 ding ding. That was one of the first things that made me want to jump on. Same with Red Hot Chili Peppers, Flea, that funky slapping and all that stuff got me into, getting my right hand familiar with that slapping technique really early on, just wanting to play all those songs that I would listen to, learning it on guitar and bass, both sides, and it just come together and make sense and really contributed to the way I put things together now inside of music and outside of music for sure.
You mentioned Alice in Chains. I had a
Mhm.
nice text exchange last night with Mike Inez of
Oh,
Alice
no
in
way.
Chains.
That's
I
awesome.
called to tell him that my wife and I saw him on TV with Elton John in the tribute, and he was going on, oh my God, Nancy Pelosi was there and Chuck Schumer and all these people. You know, it was great to see Republicans and Democrats together and enjoying music. So, was he one of your influences? You mentioned Flea. I mean, who
Mhm.
were some of your bass influences once you really started getting into the instrument?
Yeah, once I started getting that's an amazing story by the way. But yeah, once I got more into bass and was really moving forward with getting into the progressive side of music, I was really looking into Evan Brewer.
Hmm.
Yeah, we got Les Claypool, Primus, we got Myung from Dream Theater. I forgot his
Yeah,
first
John
name.
Myung.
John
Yeah,
Myung. Yep, yep. One
yeah.
of those. He was there. Of course, Jocko. I feel like I have known about Jocko, and something that I think is amazing about that bassist in particular is that when I got into him when I was around in middle school, that age, and I feel like I grew with that music. I it never left my playlist, but as I got older, I started realizing more things as the years go by and his playing and style. I thought like that just was amazing to me that even, 10 years in, 10 years listening to the same tunes, I'm still discovering different nuances and feel and techniques in his playing. So he was for sure a big one. Victor Wooten was another one. I mean, those guys were really what got me into it and just took it to the next level for me with the slapping and just being weird on the instrument, for lack of better words.
Were you still into guitar once you got more and more into the bass? Was it kind
Mhm.
of even, or did it get left behind, or what was the balance there?
Oh yeah, very, very, very much so. I uh started the whole Sanok thing when I was in high school, and I started with, doing guitar and bass for that project and kind of programming drums online until, I was able to get a little further down and get things sounding a little bit more natural. But yeah, guitar and bass were always equal, if not one little bit above, the other one a little bit above the next year. It just they really did grow together. Um and like I said, I did jazz in middle school, high school. That was like one of my favorite things about my grade school days. And I would switch off on that too. I mean, it just depended on the year and what, the music called for. And they knew they had me there for both. So
Yeah.
whatever was needed, I would jump on. And that one year that I dedicated to that particular instrument, I learned so much. And it just went back and forth. And I think, yeah, when I got into college and even in high school again, I was doing my own stuff on the side with some former members of Nautilus versus Pangolin. They were in my high school band, where I primarily did bass. So I mean, it all was just mixed together and very much balanced and equal, both instruments, and I love them equally.
I bet they were sorry to see you graduate because you
Yeah,
wouldn't be around anymore. Uh,
yeah.
you mentioned jazz in school, but
Mhm,
earlier you also mentioned you were involved in the jazz scene. How did you get
mhm,
involved in making a career? Playing music
mhm,
for money, playing professionally. How did your
mhm,
career get rolling? What kind of stuff were you doing initially?
mhm. So I remember, yeah, in high school, it wasn't really much about the money just because we were young and just wanted to play and pay our dues in the beginning. One of the first things that I remember doing was I was always open to so many different genres too. There's something to learn with everything. But when I first started, or the first time I got a good paycheck from playing music was one time in high school. We also had a little mariachi group. So one time we took our instruments home for practice, and it was Mother's Day, so we'd go do serenades around town, and the neighbors would come out, hear us, hire us to go to their mom's house. We'd go to the mom's house. The neighbors would come out, and we did that for maybe 6 hours on Mother's Day and made a good chunk of money down here where mariachi music is very much part of the tradition. So that's
Sure.
where I realized that you can make, a good living off of it if you're willing to hustle. But right now I do have um, a full-time job working at a college here locally, helping design content for VR. And I very much contribute my music part of it, especially the content creation and media design, helping me get this job, which I always use the job to help with music, use my music and learning all the gear, the media side of things, putting into my job. So I was able to really branch off from music into a different field that that allows me to get financial resources to put into my music because I'm sure it is a financial
Challenge.
dedication. Yes, or challenge. Yep, very much so.
What's the name of the college?
Yeah, it's Texas State Technical College, TSTC.
Okay.
Hmm.
Give me a little more detail about what's keeping you busy these days, because it sounds
Hmm.
like you mentioned full time. So I
Yeah.
guess but it sounds like it's not like a job where you're watching the clock and you can't wait to go home. It sounds like it's something that you really love, especially with the musical
Hmm.
component. But
Yeah.
are you getting to play out a lot as well, in addition to the stuff that you're doing in the college?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's they have a great work-life balance. I'm gonna be on tour in May with a band that I'm playing with my cousins. I am playing guitar for that band. Um, but I mean the college, they're working with it. They're working with the schedule. They're very much supportive of it. It's awesome. I think the work-life balance thing, I'm super grateful but to be in the position where I am to where I can kind of juggle everything at once because I am pretty busy during my days handling, music for two bands, filling in for a country band on bass and, working my job. It's a busy schedule, but I mean, that's what I want to do. That's been what I want to do, since I was young.
What about the band with your cousins? What kind of
Mhm.
band is that? What kind of music?
So that's rock. I would say it's rock to hard rock. It's they're called And the Hero Prevails. They've been
Say it
around for
slowly. What is it?
And the Hero Prevails.
And the hero prevails. Okay.
Yep. Yep. So they've been around for a while. We've kind of coexisted, my band's their band has been there. Um, and they had a drummer drop out, so the guitarist went to drums and they needed a guitar position. So yeah, my cousins let me know they were gonna be opening up for Hoobastank. So if I wanted to fill in, so we did that. And now we have a tour lined up with Alien Ant Farm in May.
Oh, that's great. So what about the
Mhm.
band? Is it covers? Is it originals? Is it some
Mhm.
of both or what?
So it's primarily originals. We did a Limp Bizkit cover set for fun. So we learned an hour of Limp Bizkit music. We've done that. That was an incredible experience. We played with cover our tribute bands of Slipknot, Linkin Park, and Deftones on that one. So it was those three plus us doing Limp Bizkit. So that was an incredible night.
It sounds like it must have been. Tell
Mhm.
me about your equipment and your gear. I've seen you talking about NS design and the radius bass, and you just
Yes.
be in love with that. So let's start there.
Yes. So Ennis Design, I've that whole relationship started during the pandemic. I started posting a lot of videos, and I had always wanted an NS Design Wave 5 radius base. I would see it in the Sweetwater magazines, and it was just never obtainable for me until I got to college, worked a bit, saved some money. Bought the NS Design Wave Radius completely out of pocket. And when the pandemic came through, I just resorted to putting a lot of videos up online, and eventually Lori, which is their social media specialist over there,
Howard.
yep. She, me and her started building an online relationship and just talking. She would say, you're doing some very cool things. And eventually got to a point where she referred me to Corey about potentially being an endorsed artist for them. And that went through. It helped me out a lot, just building the relationship from online. And that's how I started the relationship with NS Design. But I mean, regardless, like those are for sure the best bases in my opinion. Like if I got offered a free Fender jazz bass, I would take it, but the NS Design would still be my number one. I don't think I would find anything super reliable, ahead of its game, and just sounding good right out of the box as the wave basses. They're incredible.
Can you tell me a little bit more other than being reliable and sounding great? Is there
Mhm.
anything else? I mean, there's got to be something that just really hits the spot with you, because
Mhm.
you light up when you talk about NS design.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I can go on forever. So the I can get a really low action on those bases, which when it comes to tapping and being a little bit more technical, you want or at least for me, I like the strings to be a little bit lower than what people might be comfortable with, just because it feels a lot smoother to me, and I can achieve that really low action without getting much fret buzz with those basses. And I've had like I said, the wave radius, and I have a CR5 now. So their entry level radius bass and their high end level radius bass, and both basses were incredible at getting that low action and never really having to change with temperature. And especially down here, I live in a very high humidity area where necks can, shift here and there, but no, they've held up. I can talk about the pickups too, just being amazing. I like the radius design on the pickups too that were custom made by EMG for NS Design. I like the bridge system that was made by Hipshot. Every guitar I get, I put Hipshot hardware on it or bass, except well, but the basses come with um the Hipshot hardware custom made for NS Design. That's another level system with string changes. I've had brands such as Strandberg where when you change the strings, there's so many tiny parts that come out of the instrument itself to change those strings, whereas NS Design has nothing that comes out. You just twist it off, the string pops out, you put the new string in, and you twist it back in. It's an incredible system by Ned. I'm amazed, and that should be the standard for headless instruments now, I believe.
You know what always boggles my mind is that Ned Steinberger
Hmm.
is not a musician at all.
Hmm.
Did you know
Hmm.
that? He's
Yes,
in
I did.
art and design and balance and things like that. He's incredible. You mentioned strings a couple times. What kind of strings do you play?
Yeah, so I am very open with strings. I do have an endorsement with GHS strings, so I will primarily use them every now and then if I'm trying to get longevity out of the strings or I need something quick. I'll pick up the cheapest set of the Slinkies, the Ernie Ball Slinkies, and every now and then I'll get a pair of or a set of elixirs that fall into my lap that I'll put those on too, but I'll go GHS.
Yeah, right up the road from where I'm sitting right
Oh,
now,
nice.
Battle Creek, Michigan.
Yep.
What do you
Yep.
play through? What kind of amps and stuff?
Hmm. So bass amps, I'm using the CX210 right now. It's a GK, Gallien-Kruger cabinet.
Mhm.
Super lightweight. I also have the 410 version of the cab. I can stack them, but I usually notice the 210 does plenty well for me, especially since I don't mic up my cab. I go DI, which getting into my amp part of the section or my modeler's amp, I go through a HX stump into a dark glass cab sim slash headphone amp, which has two outputs. One is affected with a cab sim, which is a dark glass cab sim, and then it has another output that isn't affected that I do run into my analog cab. And then, as I mentioned, that affected signal will go to front of house. So I go DI. Just like I think most bass rigs are going DI now out of your power amp or your amp, whatever you're using. So I'm kind of doing the same thing, but with a very detailed cab sim on it.
Cool.
Mhm.
Now, I think either you mentioned or I read that you're
Mhm.
also an educator
Yeah, that's like my job with
at the.
TSTC. Yeah, I
Okay.
do a lot of presentations on VR. Again, I work with the VR stuff over here, the virtual reality for the people that might not be familiar with it. So, virtual reality headsets, that's what it is.
Okay, because I was picturing you running around and working on gear and being on the computer, and content creation can mean a lot of different things. But the
Uh-huh.
reason I bring it up is because for bass players only, you checked out
Mhm.
the site, so you know that we
Yep.
are a bass instruction site.
Hmm.
And I've got people from pretty much all 50 states and I don't know, 50, 60 countries, probably more than that by now around the world, coming to For Bass Players Only every day to learn how to play bass.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you caught when I said at the beginning, a lot of them are over 50.
Hmm.
I have most of the people that I'm attracting are they're mostly men, but we're getting more women now too. But
Yeah.
they all tend to be in their 50s, 60s, 70s. I've got students in their 80s and they're not trying to make a career out of it. They just want to
Hmm.
play some classic rock riffs with their friends or some blues shuffles or maybe a little funk R&B, some of them, or some walking bass and
Hmm.
whatever music that they love just to get together and play and have fun.
Of
And
course.
I'm telling you that just to give you a context because I want to ask you
Hmm.
what advice you can impart to somebody like that who wants to learn to play bass. I remember when I was 17 and I was trying to cop Jocko and Stanley Clark but the thing there's nothing wrong with that, but I was asking all the wrong questions and I had
Hmm.
all the wrong goals. I want to play fast. I want to play big. So
Hmm.
people now that my students are a lot more mature than that, and they just want to learn how to play, and they want to play their music. Maybe they've dabbled with it over the years, but
Mhm.
what do you think they should be thinking about? What advice do you have? What questions should they be asking? What goals should they have that would get that done? What do you have to say to them?
So I agree with you that it should revolve around having fun, and something that really brought my technique to the bass, what made it make sense to me is that it was my interpretation of that double thumb and slap technique. There's a few variations of it, but I do believe my the way I implement it is slightly different than what I've seen around. So my advice would be to add your flair to it. I One of my gripes about being in jazz when I was in jazz is a lot of my mentors would say, like you should sound like this, you should play like this guy, like Pat Metheny, or you should sound like Russell Malone, and that's a good reference. But I think you should focus on adding your flair to it. I think everyone has something in them that you can add to that technique. So don't try to play like Pat Metheny because there'll only be one Pat Metheny. And I remember another guitarist or someone saying something very similar to that. There's only going to be one Jocko. There's only going to be one um,
Nick
McBride. There's only going to be one. It's so many different artists. There's only going to be one of them, and there's only one of you. So add your flair to it. Don't strive for perfection and playing exactly like this one artist. Add your spice to it somehow, some way, and I think you'll get a lot more enjoyment out of it in the long run.
and it's a lot more realistic too. I
Hmm.
was interviewing Brian Beller several years ago from the Aristocrats, and
Hmm.
he was
Yes.
saying it like you're saying, it's cool to learn somebody else's line or learn their style, learn their technique, but
Hmm.
you're never gonna sound like them.
Hmm.
You're gonna sound like your version of
Yep.
them. So I
Hmm.
think you're taking it to the next level. Embrace
Hmm.
that. It's not okay that you don't sound like them. It's good that you don't sound like them.
Yes.
Make everything that you can and then make it your own. I
Hmm.
love that. Great
Yeah,
point. Thank you for saying that.
for sure. And yeah, I mean, play an instrument backwards, use your thumb, use your pinky, why not, there's no one telling you don't do it. So
And
try
there
it.
are some
Maybe
people,
it'll be
but
good. Yeah, I have a friend that started learning on a six-string ukulele for just string instruments. Now he plays a six-string Warwick bass, and he has his own style. It's insane. I've never seen anyone play the way he plays, but he for sure took that, what I just said, without me even having to tell him that, and went in his own way. And I remember him playing stuff for me, and I told him, don't ever change what you're doing. If you're gonna look up technique videos, they're gonna tell you you're wrong, but keep doing what you're doing because you've already developed this weird technique, and just keep at it. Like that's you. Don't change that.
yeah, well, I'm sure we can come up with example after example of that, and it's all.
Hmm.
What about the future? What else is coming? You mentioned you're going on tour with your cousins. You mentioned the school and some other things. Is there anything that either you haven't mentioned, or is there something that I've always wanted to, or someday I'm gonna, anything like that?
Yeah, so I like to not have specific limits for me. I like to be open to what life has to offer, and I'll take the opportunities as they come. Of course, working to working with a plan, I don't like to say I'm I'll have an idea. So let's say one of my biggest things was going to NAM. I've had that goal since I was 14 years old. And as soon as that opportunity arises, I'm going. I haven't had the chance to go yet, but I have been working very, very slowly throughout the years with it, and step by step making that possible for me. So, getting into with content creation, getting the endorsements, building the connections, and I think I'm finally in a place where that could be a reality for me very soon. So, moving for or looking into the future, I really am just open to, tours, different music, playing with different people, learning different styles of music, looking for new artists. It's just, the baby steps, that I'm really focusing on. What can I do tomorrow that'll get me ahead than where I was today, And maybe over the next course of the year, doing that 365 times in a row will, put a big goal in front of me.
You have such a healthy attitude. You mentioned your dad and Nirvana and the other stuff that he listened to. Do you have a lot of support at home, encouraging you to do what you do?
Oh, yes, very much so. Very much so. My parents have been super supportive with the music from when I was young to now. They did always uh, instill in me to have, multiple plans in mind, So that's kind of what helped me get through college. I do have a bachelor's and master's and three graduate certificates
Oh,
in the field of educational technology and e-learning, online education. So I am certified in that, and I have always been able to balance music with that. Even now that I'm working here, I really appreciate them for always encouraging both sides. Keep with the music, keep with school, and I'm balancing it. I know a lot of people will say that you should, if you're gonna do music, go all in. But I think in this day and age that we're working with, it's you have online social media to really really help you out. And like I said, I'm just super grateful to be in the position where I am, where I can kind of balance everything out, and it works for me right now.
well, that's great. I hope you never lose that spark and that energy. I have one more question for you, Nick. I
Hmm.
know you're a multi-instrumentalist, as I said at the beginning, and you said you play bass and you play guitar, but it's kind of
Hmm.
my signature sign-off question. What would you be if you were not a bass player? Something outside of music.
Gotcha.
Imagine.
Uh, so as you mentioned, I am a multi-instrumentalist. So I have a drum set. I know it's blurred, but I have a drum set right here. It's a hybrid kit. So it's all acoustic shells with internal triggers, mesh heads, acoustic or electric cymbals. And I've been really going in on that lately. And um, I feel like learning drums has really helped with my bass timing and feel to a
I'm
different
sorry.
level.
I'm laughing because I interviewed Ed Friedland a long time ago. And
Uh-huh.
I said, "What do you like to do outside of music?" And he said, "Play drums."
Yep. Yes. No, it's a timing thing. I mean, playing drums, I mean, getting all your limbs to work in a sequence to where what the listener is hearing is a groove, and that makes them feel something is insane. And I think bassists and drummers very much go hand in hand, and learning both instruments as both musicians is helpful in a way that I just cannot describe. If you're a bassist and you haven't tried learning drums, try it. Like the grooves and stuff will really help your timing and feel on bass. It'll for sure elevate it. So that's what I would do if I wasn't playing bass. I'd do drums. I've done piano too, and piano would be amazing to be good at. But outside of music, I guess yeah, I would just be like any other person focusing on their career. I'd be doing the VR stuff because that is a field that I really like too. And again, it goes hand in hand with all the content creation stuff of music and learning how to implement all this stuff. There's a lot of overlay, and it's awesome to be able to make those connections.
Well, you're very inspiring and you're very enjoyable to talk to. You're making me want to do a lot of stuff. So I really appreciate you coming on. I thank you so much. Good luck with everything, the tour and the job and the VR and all that stuff that I'm sure wouldn't, I would never understand. So, but very cool. Thanks so much for joining us. And I wish you much luck and continued success always. And please keep in touch and let me know how you're doing. I know you're going to go far, even farther than you've already gone.
Thank you so much, John. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity. And I'll take this one last chance to just say Nautilus versus Pangolin. We have a new single coming out May 10th. We haven't announced it yet, so this might be breaking the news for some listeners. But yeah, May 10th, got a song coming out. Very cool bass parts in there. I know your listeners will enjoy it.
I'm
It'll be awesome.
sure we all will. Thank you, Nick. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. If you've ever wanted to learn bass, you should know that right now there are thousands of people inside the For Bass Players Only community, a lot of them over 50, learning bass, playing music that they love, having the time of their life. You should come join them and experience that incredible, awesome transformation for yourself. You're never too old to groove. So let's play bass. Thanks again to my special guest, Nick Cañas. I'm John Liebman. I will see you all next week, right here, same time, same place. In the meantime, let's play bass.